The end of the government-operated system, governance over ownership. Episode 13, State-Owned Enterprise Reform, North Korea's Transition to Capitalism. Creating the miracle on the Taedong River. North Korea's Workers' Party can implement a market economy. When North Korea pursues state-owned enterprise reform and gradual privatization while maintaining its political system, the most realistic approach is a gradual model centered on Chinese-style mixed ownership and incorporation. North Korea must avoid Russian-style shock privatization and base its approach on Chinese-style gradual reform and selective privatization, while also addressing the inefficiencies of the Chinese model. To put it simply, the optimal path for North Korea is not Russian-style large-scale rapid privatization, but rather the path of selective privatization through Chinese-style incorporation and mixed ownership. As of 2026, while North Korea grants some autonomy to enterprises regarding production, pricing, and surplus management through the Socialist Enterprise Responsibility Management System introduced in 2014, state planning priorities and control by the party and government remain strong. Lessons of success and failure can be gleaned by referring to the cases of Russia and China. In the early 1990s, Russia rapidly opened its economic sovereignty through large-scale privatization that involved a sudden shock therapy approach to pricing and the distribution of state-owned enterprise share vouchers. Rapid privatization, carried out in the absence of a robust legal and institutional foundation such as competition law, bankruptcy law, judicial independence, and the protection of property rights, resulted in assets being transferred at bargain prices to politically connected oligarchs. In the process of hastily transferring ownership to the private sector, while state-owned enterprises lacked capitalist governance structures, oligarchs amassed vouchers at low prices to seize control. They became insiders to plunder assets and transferred them to private companies at rock-bottom prices through tunneling methods, such as inter-affiliate transactions, capital transfers, and mergers. Amid the chaos caused by this shock, social instability reached extreme levels, with production collapsing, prices skyrocketing, GDP plummeting by over 40%, and unemployment surging. Although the goal was corporate efficiency through privatization, corruption only worsened, leading to capital outflow. Furthermore, most privatized enterprises failed to become efficient and remained vulnerable to asset plunder, resulting in the side effect of state monopolies being replaced by private monopolies, essentially a change in the ownership of the monopoly. This failure in Russia serves as a lesson that corporate governance must come before privatization without a proper legal framework. In a situation like North Korea, where remnants of a planned economy are strong, sanctions are in place, and infrastructure is lacking, temporary large-scale privatization carries a very high risk of causing political instability and economic chaos. Therefore, it is difficult for North Korea, where maintaining the regime is the priority, to accept such measures. Now let us look at the case of China. China's reform of state-owned enterprises began in 1978 under the principle of hold the big, let go of the small. That is, strategic large state-owned enterprises were retained while small ones were privatized. Corporate autonomy was also expanded, and profits were retained, along with the implementation of a dual pricing system. Starting in the 1990s, the country embarked on corporatization, converting state-owned enterprises into joint stock companies and introducing the modern enterprise system. State-owned enterprises, formerly government departments, were transformed into companies, with the state acting only as a shareholder rather than managing the operations. Since the 2000s, the system has evolved into a mixed ownership model to attract private and foreign capital, thereby diluting corporate equity and introducing competition. Strategic industries such as energy, telecommunications, and national defense have maintained state control, while other competitive industries have been privatized or partially privatized. Despite its significant success, the Chinese model also has clear limitations. Continued interference in corporate management through the establishment of party committees led to adverse effects, such as persistent inefficiency, corruption, and excessive debt. Even with mixed ownership reforms, state control was not weakened, and an unfair competitive environment was created that hindered the growth of the private sector. The lesson for North Korea is that a gradual dual-track approach is advantageous for political stability and economic growth. If the state maintains strategic control, such as by holding a stake of 51% or more, or establishing a party committee while introducing private incentives, North Korea's socialist enterprise responsibility management system can be developed in this direction. In other words, the implication applicable to North Korea is to avoid the Russian-style rapid privatization and instead adopt the Chinese-style path of gradual incorporation, mixed ownership, limited privatization. This approach aims for efficiency and attracting investment while maintaining party leadership and state control as core elements to preserve the political system. Now let us examine the plan for reforming North Korean state-owned enterprises and gradual privatization. North Korea requires a differentiated approach, classifying industries into strategic sectors such as defense, heavy chemical, energy and mining, and competitive sectors such as consumer goods, light industry, food, and services. We will develop a step-by-step roadmap based on the premise of maintaining the political system. In the short term, 1 to 3 years, we will strengthen the socialist enterprise responsibility management system while establishing the foundation for incorporation. This is similar to China in the 1980s. The socialist enterprise responsibility management system will be further concretized. Legally, state planning will be limited to strategic goals. Enterprises will be allowed to autonomously set parts of their production plans, and their authority over pricing, sales, and surplus distribution will be expanded. Existing state-owned enterprises will be incorporated by converting them into joint stock companies. The enterprise law and the companies law will be amended to define state-owned enterprises as 100% state capital joint stock companies. A board of directors and an audit committee will be established to introduce a management accountability system and implement a performance-linked bonus system. The internationalization of accounting audit standards is also necessary, although it can be applied partially in the initial stages. Incorporation will be piloted starting with inefficient small enterprises and local enterprises. To manage risks, political control will be maintained through the establishment of a party committee, and the state, specifically the cabinet, or a newly established state-owned asset management agency, will act as the major shareholder. In the intermediate phase of 3 to 7 years, a mixed ownership system will be introduced, leading to limited privatization. This is similar to China's model from the 1990s to the 2010s. The mixed ownership reform allows for equity participation by private capital, specifically wealthy investors and foreigners. Strategic industries maintain a state stake of over 51%, while introducing technology and capital with a private stake of 49%. Industries such as railways, electricity, oil, key minerals, and defense-linked sectors will remain state-owned enterprises, be incorporated, commercialized, and converted into joint stock companies. For competitive industries, the state stake will be reduced to 51%, and joint ventures with the private sector will be expanded. Large, competitive state-owned enterprises in sectors such as steel, cement, chemicals, and machinery will be partially privatized with a state stake of 51% and a private stake of 49%, while local or small and medium-sized state-owned enterprises will be immediately privatized on a large scale. Naturally, chronically failing state-owned enterprises will be liquidated or reorganized. Let us look at the detailed plan for converting to joint stock companies. Regarding the issuance of shares, state-owned assets will be valued as stocks upon conversion, either internal shares, such as employee equity, or external shares, such as private or foreign capital, will be issued. The governance structure involves board-centered management running in parallel with a party committee. This is also a Chinese style. The listing method is also gradual initially. Internal trading or special zone stock markets will be operated on a trial basis, and the establishment of the Pyongyang Stock Exchange will be considered in the long term. Incentives will be provided to management and workers through an employee stock ownership system by granting them equity stakes. In the gradual privatization phase, inefficient enterprises will be sold to the private sector first through mergers and acquisitions or auctions, and the state will introduce bankruptcy laws to establish exit mechanisms. This will be applied first to special zones such as Rason and Sinuiju, linked to attracting foreign investment. In the long term, after 7 years, the stage will be to complete the market economy type enterprise system. Most enterprises will be converted into joint stock companies, and the state's role will shift to focus on regulation and supervision. Direct state control will be maintained only for strategic industries. In compliance with international standards, preparations for accession to the World Trade Organization (WTO), the conclusion of investment protection agreements, and the internationalization of corporate governance will be pursued. Let us examine the essential parallel measures for risk management and success. The institutional foundation must be laid first. This involves overhauling the legal system by protecting property rights, strengthening contract law, establishing an independent judiciary for dispute resolution, and enacting bankruptcy and competition laws. Ensuring macroeconomic stability through the gradual liberalization of prices, monetary stability, and inflation control is also necessary. Preparing infrastructure and manpower, such as improving power and transportation, strengthening management education, and facilitating international technology transfer is also essential. Political risk management is also crucial. This involves granting initial preferential treatment to companies affiliated with the party and the military to minimize elite resistance and to control and leverage the expansion of wealthy elites. In terms of international connectivity, foreign capital is attracted by linking it with the Special Act on Special Economic Zones, using sanctions relief incentives such as the transition to capitalism and the abandonment of nuclear weapons. This approach enables North Korea to achieve initial productivity improvements and attract investment. Similar to China, however, if party control remains strong, true efficiency may be limited. To avoid the failure of Russia, gradualism and institutional refinement are key. The most important aspect of North Korea's state-owned enterprise reform is not privatization, but the end of the system in which the government operates enterprises. This is the essence. Governance structure is more important than ownership. The strategy for reforming North Korean state-owned enterprises can be organized by having the state control large enterprises, leaving small ones to the private sector, and establishing mixed ownership for medium-sized enterprises. Next time, we will look into how to foster chaebols in North Korea. Isn't it quite interesting that chaebols are being created in socialist North Korea? Thank you.